But see, what you were saying, the way I was understanding it, is that every time, like a player, for example, made a mistake, it's almost like it generates a trauma, and a trauma generates a whole different circuit in your brain, right? And because of that trauma, he would, um, likely not make the same mistake in the future because he already suffered that, and so he learned from that, let's say. But you can also say that because of that mistake generated a trauma that created a blockage, and then he was never the same. Like you said, he was never a threat anymore to any other players. He was never like the striker that he used to be.
Right.
Because when you go through a harsh experience or something like that is impacting in your life, like say it generates a trauma. It could be a negative or a positive trauma. And when you generate that trauma, when that trauma is, it's what's the word? Created, let's say, you create a whole different nervous circuit in your brain that it's almost like it's something that is alive inside your brain, and it creates a blockage, or it creates a new, let's say, ability almost, so you won't make the same mistakes, that. And that's also I think it's so interesting because you can relate that to the practical function of memory. That's why we're able to remember things. So we're able to make mistakes and remember them, and live through them again over and over, so we won't make the same mistakes in the future. And that's part of psychology. I think that's I don't know how it's called, like that type of treatment, but I think it's called exposure treatment. So when someone has a fear or a phobia or something like that, you treat the way you treat that person. Let's say that person is afraid of dogs. The way you treat that person is you talk about the fear first, and then you slowly expose that person to the fear, and you slowly make that person relive that fear, because usually a fear it's caused by a trauma. So let's say that person as a kid was chased by a big dog when they were like riding their bicycle as a kid, and this big dog chased them and barked at them or whatever. It created that trauma, and that person developed a phobia of dogs. So you expose that person slowly to that fear. Maybe at first you only talk about it, and the next session you will show pictures of dogs to that person so they can look at it. And then the next phase, they will look at a dog from far away, go to a dog park or whatever, just like look at the dogs, from far away. And then maybe, deeper into the treatment, you will maybe bring a dog to the session and have that person pet the dog, So the idea is that you slowly expose that person to the fear. And that's proven to be like the most effective way to cure people from phobias or fears.
Interesting.
And very interesting, yeah.
I actually I've never heard of that process, but it makes sense.
And in life,
the way you explained
we're
it, at least.
full of fears. I mean, especially nowadays, I feel like people are really living like in this state of agony and kind of constant fear of everything. And I think I feel like the best way to deal with that is to expose yourself, like the surfing. Like I was really afraid of sharks.
Well, you still are afraid of sharks.
And I'm still afraid of sharks, but I went surfing with you 2 times.
Right.
And I want to go again. So I kind of lost. I didn't lose the fear.
Right.
But
you faced it.
I faced it, and I don't let the fear control my actions anymore. So I think that's a great example, like a personal example. Like even if there is a shark in this beach that we are surfing at, like there are other 300 people surfing at this beach. So the probability that the shark is going to attack you, it's very low. But the probability that there is a shark there is already very low. So it's almost like getting struck by lightning, but it could happen.
Exactly. And that's our minds just focusing on that negative, I think it's really important. Let me go back because now I'm taking notes so I can actually address all the things that I wanted to say.
Look at this guy. He's stealing my methods.
I know. This is you.
And I'm not taking notes today. That's not fair.
Well, you're using your note-taking thing as a coaster. That's on you. But so before I would like to add something to, you were talking about the trauma and how trauma can shape your future. Of course, like it's kind of like any other stimulation. It can be perceived as a trauma, or it can actually, or not, depending on the mindset. I think mindset is very important to see and to process the things that happen to you. Because, for example, if us here and us in most of our situation, our lives, we can look at something as a learning opportunity, even if we fail. We can process it in the vein of, these things happened, we didn't want this outcome, but what did we do wrong that we can fix that can bring us closer to the outcome that we want? And I think that's kind of like what we're doing here. We're totally unprepared, jumping into the deep end rather than rehearsing a bunch of things.
But see how you can relate that to I said, the practical function of memory, because you need to be able to remember things in order to go back and relive the moment so you can understand the mistakes that were made and the whole process, so you won't make those mistakes again.
This is all a mindset, because nothing guarantees that that's the mindset that you have to begin with. In fact, I would argue that more naturally, people won't have that insight, because I think that's kind of like, it's a little bit of two things. One, it's a little bit of insight into your own mind, put something, a name to it. And the second one is kind of like it's a way to view the world. It's kind of like the half empty, half full cup paradigm, where you can see things from a positive angle, things from a negative angle, and people will naturally, or through experience of their lives, will gravitate more towards one and more towards the other, being one of them kind of more constructive, in order for you to do better than before, to learn from your mistakes, or even learn from other people's mistakes, so you don't have to do them in the first place. Of course, like, making mistakes is the best teaching tool, the best learning tool for yourself. And
it takes a smart guy to learn from its own mistakes, and it takes a wise guy to learn from other people's mistakes.
Exactly. And that's a phrase that stuck with me when I was from very young. Like, you don't need to make all the mistakes. You can learn from other people's, and there's humbleness in that aspect when you can kind of see and analyze other people's
without judging. But you got to judge. I mean,
sure, but I would say that it can go both ways. Because you said, like, person will have a trauma, what I would call, like, not missing a goal is not a trauma, or shouldn't be trauma in the grand scheme of things, but you can consider it into a traumatic or mildly traumatic adventure. I'm not sure if there's a grading system for trauma.
Depends on the stakes of the situation.
But
like losing a World Cup.
But
the context could create a trauma because of the
right.
But anyways, finish your
so
line of
what I'm trying to say is that it can work on the other end. You can create a block. It can create like a downward spiral of events if you don't have the mental tools to process this in a positive way.
Yeah.
Other things that can come from it is kind of like some emotional coping systems to that. There can be denial. There can be sort of like trying to forget about certain situations, which is probably not the right way to deal with trauma, but it's kind of thing that a lot of people will probably do, because that's what you naturally, when you don't have the equipment, the tools to address these things. And that's why that's kind of like where therapy a lot of times comes in, because they're trying to equip people with the tools to tackle these traumas at whatever level it may be, because it can be something egregious, can be like a terrible life experience, a very, very traumatic, or it can be something as, the sports psychology, which is, okay, I'm a professional, I need to perform, I'm getting performance anxiety, I'm doing all these things, like take a musician or like a first violinist that has to perform with like this huge, the London Metropolitan Orchestra or whatever. It takes nerves of steel to play that first note, and takes years and years and countless hours of preparation.
Of course.
But even then, it's a high pressure situation, no matter how well prepared you are. So that's always interesting to adjust that psychology, because it can destroy. I've known a lot of people, and I was suffering from it myself, even though I don't perform at like these extremely high pressure levels.
Yeah.
But performance anxiety was always something that was constant through my childhood when I was doing sports and through my adulthood doing music. I always had a lot of, I felt like the stress and the adrenaline hindered my performance. And I would not enjoy it as much, and I would feel like, it was never, I was never growing with the pressure. I was all kind of caving in. And then one time I heard a friend of mine he's in a band talk to, this was on an Instagram story, and it said something that is very interesting. And that clicked with another thing that I'm going to say first. Apparently, anxiety and the euphoria of adrenaline are chemically the same reaction in your brain. So somebody who's very anxious, I'm really anxious to go on stage and sing, and the person who says, I'm really excited to go out and sing for thousands of people.
Caused by a substance called cortisol?
Well, cortisol is a stress hormone, but you also have the adrenaline hormone, because adrenaline is a hormone.
Okay.
And apparently...
Call the specialist.
Apparently, it's the exact same feeling, and it's the exact same chemistry.
Yeah.
But the perception
is different.
Of this feeling is opposite, and that's why some people
can
will
you shift that perception voluntarily?
I think you
That'd be kind of
probably can, but you have to be mindful about it. But the point is, the person who feels anxiety is like, I want to throw up, I'm so nervous, I want to throw up, and the person who feels I'm so excited, I want to throw up, they're feeling the exact same thing, but one will thrive in this environment and the other one will...
That's why also, that's why I feel like nowadays, I believe that nowadays, like we say, oh, we have this high, how do you say, a lot of people have anxieties nowadays, like being diagnosed with anxieties and panic or whatever. I don't feel like it's anxiety that we're suffering from. We're suffering from a certain sort of like agony feeling. It's almost like you're in your head the whole time, and the future is uncertain, and there's a lack of aim and objective. There's a lack of action, and I feel like we're suffering. I suffer from that for a long time. Like when I first moved to the United States, I had that. I went through a depression period where I had to organize my thoughts and understand what was happening to my body, and I felt like it was caused by of course, like by a big change in my life, but also the lack of purpose, the lack of knowing which steps to take, or the lack of understanding what the overall goal for me to be here was, So purpose, like meaning, like finding that, it's very hard in life. So I feel like people nowadays, society, suffering from this sort of like agony feeling. Like it's agonizing. I don't know if that's the word, agonizing. Like it's almost like this pressure in your heart, and you're like, you don't know what to do with it. It's much more like agony than anxiety, because anxiety it's more like adrenaline. It gets you hyped up, and you get nervous. I don't know. Maybe maybe that's my personal perception, but I wanted to say something from what you said, like the half cup full or half cup empty.
Cup half full or half empty.
The cup half full or half empty. And also, like you said, like therapy sometimes will give you the tools to shift that mindset. So maybe we can make the case that a lot has to do with the way you see things, with your perspective and your mentality, and not really with the trauma itself or the inability to accomplish certain things or to do certain things. It's much more the way you are, you're seeing things, and your approach, your mental, psychological approach to situations in life, diverse situations in life, than the actual trauma that you suffered.
Hello everybody, and thank you for watching until the end. This has been Woke Wars, and I hope you liked our conversation. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about next. Also, check out some of our other episodes. We post every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We will see you on the next one.